Order, let's just stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's great to see all of you members of the staff and the community out here. Sometimes it gets a little lonely during our board meetings. It's nice to see a really good turnout tonight. So the agenda is a little bit different tonight from our regular board meetings. From 6 to 7, we're going to be continuing our deliberation of the budget. Budget deliberation will go on from 6 to 7. Wednesday, we'll have a 2-hour session. It might be in the morning, it might be in the evening, not posted yet. And then Thursday, we have 6 to 9, which are a session in which we'll vote on the budget. So tonight, after 7, we'll start our regular session, and then after we start our regular session, we'll have public comment. So we'll go from 6 to 7, start our regular session, and then have public comment for however long that takes, and then we'll go through the rest of our normal monthly board agenda. So I guess Dr. McCursey has a few things to start with, but first Melissa wanted to say a few words.
Yes, good evening. I'm so glad to see so many of you here tonight. I am on, no? Can you hear me now? Better, okay, great. I'm just gonna hold it. So I was just saying I'm so glad to see so many of you here tonight. So before we get into the budget discussion, the board really wanted to take the opportunity to address our school community directly, especially our teachers. So first of all, thank you for all that you do for our students. We all love the town of Weston, and Weston's greatest asset is undoubtedly its schools. And the schools are so successful because all of the things that you do. And we've seen firsthand, time and time again, your innovation and your commitment. We know that as resources have gotten tighter and administrative support has decreased, that you've taken on more work. And we know that you've done so without diminishing the great product that you deliver in the classroom every day. So in this budget cycle, we are asking your central administration to do the same thing, to make do with less, to work within the more limited resources that are available to us. We are all parents who have had and do have children in the schools. We volunteered to serve on the Board of Education because of the positive experiences that we've had with the schools and our desire to give back to the community. And we take that responsibility very seriously. So like our neighbors, we are concerned about the declining home values, the tax increases, and a mill rate that is creeping into uncharted territory. And we know that what we love about Weston is at risk if we can't get our spending under control. So as such, since the close of last year's budget cycle, we've repeatedly emphasized the need for a budget proposal with a 0% increase in order to develop an affordable base case for analysis. While it has not been a formal request from the board until last week, given the difficult budget discussions over the past few years and the financial challenges facing this town, there is nothing sudden or surprising about this request. And we have consistently and repeatedly stressed that any cuts to achieve a flat budget should come from cost centers as far removed from the classroom as possible. At no time have we recommended or even discussed a reduction in force among teachers. So last week we offered the administration a number of suggestions in developing a 0% budget and also a 2.5% one. This is a public document and we encourage you to review it. There is no single or easy solution to this very difficult problem, and addressing it properly won't happen overnight. But if we start today by putting into place structural changes in the way our district is managed, and also by developing innovative approaches to education, then we can put Weston on a path to financial stability and unlock new opportunities for targeted educational investment that actually distinguish our district. So Thank you for your support through this process, and thank you for your commitment to the schools. You know how to reach us. I promise we read everything that you send us, so keep it coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Dr. McCursey?
So, as the board requested, we have for you a set of potential reductions to get to the zero budget. We will hand out the document shortly. I want to be clear that it's in two parts. The first part is what we gave you on Thursday. That's to get it to the 2.89 reduction from the 5.5. It's listed with some brief notes for each of those, so there's some clarity. We then present from the 289 down to the zero. This was all developed by the principals and the cabinet in a lot of intensive work. To go from the 289 down to the zero, they're listed here. None of these we recommend, none of these we support. We bring them to you for your consideration. We understand completely and respect completely your request to look at what a zero would look like, but there's nothing on this list that your administrators, the principals, and the cabinet would recommend you do because of the dire impact it will have on teaching and learning. With 80% of the budget personnel, there is personnel here. You will see reductions at all levels in the organization listed here, but what I'd ask is we'll distribute it. Again, we'll walk through, since a lot of the attendees were not in that Thursday workshop, we'll walk through quickly part one. That's the 5.5 to 2.89. We'll go through that very quickly, Phil will, and then we'll go through the 2.89 down to the zero. With the 2.89 to the zero, there's an accompanying document which lists all of the implications for that reductions. The items, there are 22 of them, going from, if you will, the 2.89 down to the zero. My thought would be, and it's good you're trying to schedule a meeting Wednesday, there's a lot here, there's no other way to bring it to you, but in this handout at this point, you'll want time to absorb it, work with it, talk more with us certainly Wednesday as you're able to schedule that, and certainly dig into it Thursday. In terms of the work here, believe it or not, we're ahead of other times where on that final Thursday we were there looking at the significant reductions. We've been working on this ahead of that for a while. So we'll distribute the document now. We have copies for all of the cabinet, all of the board, the cabinet, principals, and there are probably about 90 copies, 85 to 90 for the public. It also will be prompted soon.
Yeah, I think for tonight, what probably will happen is from the board, you'll get a lot of questions in terms of clarification, but this is the first time we're seeing it, so we're going to have to take this away and probably have more detailed questions at the Wednesday session. So what I anticipated, because we do need to go into the other session at 7, is basically questions around clarifications, and then we'll between now and Wednesday, probe deeper and do the analysis we need to do to come back with our comments.
Right. So, yep. And then Meredith has copies for the public.
No, thank you.
So Phil, are you ready? So for the board, since you have it in front of you, again, just Phil will now walk you through it, but page 1 is the listing from 5.5 to 2.89. Again, this is what you saw on Thursday with now some notes provided, a little more clarity, not impact statements. Then on page 2 is the listing of the 2.89 down to the zero. The impact statements for those, which are detailed, are in this accompanying document. Everything is listed from the largest reduction to the smallest reduction. So Phil, I don't know if you want to now walk us through what's here. Yeah, you can start.
So just to clarify, just a quick update. So the amounts that we presented on last week was at 2.86. There's a slight adjustment that we made just to clean things up. So now we're currently at 2.89 for that first go around. So this is a quick recap as to what happened last week at our last meeting. The items that we presented a budget of an increase of 5.5%. Or $2.948 million. The board, as they mentioned earlier, requested to see two different looks. One look to get us to 2.5. Can you hear me now? Okay. Have to hold it. So we started with a budget of 5.55%, roughly $2.9 million. The board requested to have two different looks on the budget, a look that will represent a 2.5% increase, and the second look to see what it would look like to be at a zero. So just a quick recap as to what got us to our currently. We didn't get to the 2.5, we got to 2.89. 2.86 was presented earlier. So that's the quick recap. We're going to shift, the plan is to shift the dental claims from our operating budget to our internal service fund account, or a savings account, so to speak, representing roughly $400,000, almost $400,000. There's several adjustments to technology representing $248,000. Included in that are some reduction to proposed equipment and some tier 2 support. There's a proposed reduction both at the middle school and the high school. There's a further reduction at the element at Hurlbut. The initial projection for Hurlbut was to go by 2 sections. We're reducing that growth from 2 down to 1. There's currently a vacant mechanics position in facilities. The plan is not, or we're proposing not to fill that position. Further, there is a reduction at a grade 4 at WIS. In terms of our targeted investment, we're deferring our speech and spread teacher, a 0.8 FTE. We're also deferring our curriculum and instruction, a 0.4. Included in that 73,000 are some other cuts. There's cuts to travel, an additional 20% cut to travel. There's also a cut to summer writing curriculum. And we're also proposing not to purchase some Chinese online textbooks for next year. We're hoping to find funds to do that within the current year. Security measures, we're shifting our security measures from our operating budget to the capital budget, which is similar to what has been done in the past. There's several targeted investment which we outlined in our original budget. The plan right now is to defer those. And theater. This is not a cut. What this represents is we're going to we'll be able to purchase a soundboard that was listed from a third private party. In addition to that, we had proposed an adjustment to the stipend for the theater coordinator. That has been removed, and pretty much all the other adjustments that were made was to get us in line to our current budget for FY20. There was also an initial proposal to make some adjustments to our 612 guidance council role that has also been deferred. We're also proposing to align the middle and the high school materials line to our current budget. Similar to that is also the reduction for our dues and fees. So all those adjustments that were made totaled roughly $1.4 million, or a reduction of 2.66. To the requested budget of $5.55 million. That got us to 2.89. The adjustments that will be reflected from this point are all the adjustments that we reviewed and that we think will get us to a zero. As Dr. McPherson mentioned, there's 22 of those line items. I just want to just read just real quick, just because of time, what those items are.
They tie to this, just remind people.
Correct. Oh, in addition to that, there's detailed explanation or impact statement in the memorandum that you guys just received. This is in no particular order. We just decided that the best way to just outline this was in numerical order. First off, there's to get us to zero, there's a reduction to a library meter specialist to 2 library meter specialists. There's a reduction to 1 cabinet position. There's an elimination of our information and technology coordinator. There's a reduction, proposed reduction, or to get us to zero, a reduction to our current SIL model. There's a further reduction, well, not further. There's a reduction to kindergarten at Hurlbut that will get us from, I believe, 8 to 7 sections. Also tied in with our central office, 7 to 6, sorry. Also tied in with our cabinet position or just overall at central office. We will need to reduce 1 support staff there. We will need to eliminate a double block of English language arts at the middle school. We will need to eliminate K2 world language programs at our Hurlbut. Also, we need to eliminate our team leaders across the district. We would also need to reduce all course offerings which are below 15, an enrollment of 15 students at the high school. We would also need to eliminate Project Challenge. There's a need to eliminate the elementary paraprofessional. Also to get us to zero, we would need to reduce athletics offerings. All the details are in the memorandum attached. Also at the high school is a reduction to our case. Also to be reduced is the write-in center. In addition to the world language, there's a reduction in the world language at the WIS, 3-5 world language. Also a reduction or elimination of grade 4 strings and orchestra program. There's a further reduction in the consultant line for curriculum and instruction. There's an overall reduction for stipends at the high school. There's a reduction at 1 co-curricular jazz band at the middle school. And to get us to zero, we would need to reduce an additional $59,000. The final item there is not a reduction, it's an increase. And this is just in anticipation of any additional claims that we'll have for unemployment. So all said, this further reduction is additional $1.5 million reduction, or 2.89. All in, we'll need to reduce the budget by 2.948238, or 5.5%, to get back to pretty much a flat budget, a year-over-year flat budget.
So if I may, just final comment. Again, that final set, the 289 to 0, we bring that to you for your consideration, but none of that we recommend, none of that we support, because of the dire effects it would have on the district in many, many ways. You do have district-wide administration cuts here, and we've tried to work around the edges, working very carefully with the principals around still maintaining core academic, core co-curricular programming, but to try and shave around the edges to get to the zero, just so you can consider that. Again, there's a lot of discussion to be had here. As I'd advised you Thursday, once you go to this depth in Weston never's had to do this, none of our neighboring districts are going to this level, you begin to see the effects and the impact. Again, I respect and understand the board's desire to look at this and help the community understand what is the effects of going to a zero. Obviously a lot to discuss here. We have some of that we can do tonight, but certainly in the Wednesday meeting and the Thursday meeting.
Maybe I can start with a couple of questions. The one thing that would be helpful is to understand how the reductions are by cost center and object, because that will show us where it really is. From just roughly look, oh, I'm sorry. One thing that would be really helpful is to look at what the adjustments are by cost center and object, because this doesn't really, because when I look at this, and I just do some rough math, it looks like out of the 19.4 FTEs, 12 come out of the schools. And so I just want to understand. I mean, I'm just looking down the list. So I'd like to understand a little bit better. And then out of that 2.89 to 0, it seems like all of those are salary, wages, and benefits. How much are other objects, which doesn't seem like a lot in terms of looking at all of the other objects under each cost center. It looks like mostly FTE cuts, predominantly at the school level, and not a lot in terms of other looking at other objects in the cost centers. But if you kind of draw that matrix, you know, sort of like how the FTE adjustments line up by cost center and object, we'll be able to kind of visually see how this is all shaking out.
So a schedule similar to the one that we presented last week would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you the board prefer to have that prior to the Wednesday meeting?
It would be nice to have that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a few more, but maybe others. Okay. Maybe what we could discuss a little bit is, you know, at the end of the day, what we're really asking is, I mean, we're talking about a cut from the proposed budget, but we're really talking about what can we do if we had to basically spend the same amount of money that we spent this year for education and probably a little bit more than we spent last year. And it seems like just spending the same amount as we spent this year in terms of running the district seems to have what looks like a very disastrous effect. So maybe someone can speak to if we went to 0, what are we not getting? I mean, okay, we see the numbers here, but maybe someone could describe what it is that would happen to our district if we actually spent the same amount of money next year as we spent this year.
Well, I might suggest, I mean, the value of both the principals and the cabinet working on the impact document you have would be, I'd urge you to review that study because that's the answer to the question.
Yep.
As we had presented in the very opening first budget back in early January, like it or not, we have a set of built-in structural costs that account for growth that has to be there. We can't avoid that, get out of that. Contracts, carryover expenses from last year that have to be looked at, new expenses, not anticipated. It happens in every district and all the time. You know, we got you down to 289. That's very much in the ballpark of our competitor districts, in the ballpark of where Weston's been historically. We've given you the deeper look and with a lot of detail on the impact. I think if you read the document, and again, we didn't expect you to study it all tonight, but in those 7 pages, and the community will study those, you will see the effect. Again, you know, you're getting ratio-wise similar impact, whether you're looking at the administration or looking out in the buildings relative to total employees. So we have taken that step in this set. But I think the answer to the question, Tony, is really in those documents. Study those, and then, you know, we could speak to a little bit tonight, but I think the written word here would help you as a board. We worked hard the last 2 days and over the weekend to prepare that document so you and the community have a full statement as to the detail and to the impact.
I just have a question going back to, because we've had more time to study what you proposed for the 289. And Craig, I have a question about technology. Has there been any survey given to the teachers or even the students in terms of ranking the software that we offer in this district in terms of priority? And when you list software in terms of one of the cuts, have we taken a survey and said, okay, this is priority, we can't just cut all of software, this is priority, this is not priority?
No, teachers overall have not been surveyed. The CILs were the ones involved with the process of determining software both last year and this year. We are not cutting all software out of the budget entirely. That's actually hardware is where we're cutting the most. Software were new requests and things that hadn't been previously done. So.
You know, and we can expand on it a little bit. The work with the SILs is very active. They're teachers representing. Ken, you may want to speak to what it means when we engage with the SILs on the software.
So we meet in our curriculum council. How's that? Yep. So we meet in our curriculum council, and we review line by line all the different software tools. We've done this the past 2 years, and this year you can see that we've already taken out any new requests, as Craig mentioned, but they are in tune with their departments and the teachers within their departments, and we look at that to see what is essential, and over time some tools become less useful to us, and so we phase those out, and then new tools like we initially brought this year come in to play, and that is generally our practice.
Ruby, were you, can you hear me? Ruby, were you talking just about curricular-related software or all software across the district? And the reason I ask that is we know for a fact that there's some can you hear me okay? There's some software that is obviously directly used by teachers with students in classrooms. And then there's a whole lot of other software that's used for the infrastructure of how we operate as a district. So I was just trying to clarify.
Yeah, I don't see the details around this cut of 250,000. That's why I was asking for clarification. I do want to though just make a statement, because we repeatedly hear this is what's going on in the DIRG, this is what's going on in the DIRG. I will look to DIRG for process, understanding best practices, what efficiencies they have, etc. I will not look to DIRG when it comes to a one-for-one comparison on headcount, organizational structure, or even budget increase, because I truly feel that we are in a different place than the DIRG, and we have to do what's best for our town. A lot of other districts are not experiencing what Weston is experiencing right now. So I don't want to hear the DIRG is doing this, the DIRG is doing that. Again, I will look for best practices and efficiencies, but not comparative in terms of organizational structure or budget increase.
Ruby, if I may, I appreciate the comment. I'm speaking very broadly when I talk about our sister educational organizations. I'm not speaking just about DIRG A. I couldn't endorse your comment more about, since coming to Connecticut, the focus on the DIRGs from an educational quality standpoint is misplaced. I mean, that's simply a demographic grouping for different analytical purposes. But I think it's, my view is you look very broadly at a range of districts down in this area. You look across the border into the Westchester County, you look down into the Long Island area, and we don't have as much private school competition as some of our other districts. Greenwich, 26% of the school-age children go to independent schools, so there you need to kind of look at the comparisons. We do about 10% of our families looking out, so I couldn't agree with you more. The DIRG A narrowly struck is not the comparison, but I think we have to be thoughtful, and I know you are thoughtful, as to educational organizations as they go through difficult budget times, and that's what we're in Weston. How do they address that? How do they modify their work? Those are the comparisons that I'm rooted in.
Phil, can I just ask, I mean, I really appreciate how difficult this is, and it's been difficult for everyone involved. We talked a couple of weeks ago about taking a look at this with optimism and patience, as you indicated, as a series of concentric circles. The center one, or the bullet of this, the target rather, the bullseye of this series of concentric circles being the students, and moving out from there and really looking at building this budget from the outside in. Can you say that what you've presented with us tonight is absolutely taken a look at everything possible on the outside 2 or 3 circles in your mind, from the administration, from the cabinet on down, before touching those center circles? Can you say that you, as of now, have stripped everything you think you can strip on the administrative and infrastructure side before affecting the students?
I think, I mean, obviously there's a strong interest on the board to look at the cabinet level. If you sort of layer that into the 289, I think the 289 is a level, and maybe you fold that in there, that single position. We also have put in there a central office support position, the technology position is very, very significant. So those are 3 major district-wide reductions. Otherwise, so the answer is yes. That layered in, the answer is yes, because in a district of this size, if we're not doing it in the cabinet or in the central administration, and we've looked very carefully at this since the minute I got here. Again, it's the work. What's the work? That work cannot stop. The work then goes down to the principals and the assistant principals. You do not see on this list assistant principals, assistant directors. That's rooted in that core question, because they are most directly there. Often districts at this moment, and Weston's done this before, they reduce at the assistant principal level. That would be very faulty. I'm strongly recommending you do not reduce at the assistant director level in terms of the PPS area because of the critical work there. But I think the answer is yes, because, and there may be disagreements on this, everything every staff does has an impact on a child every single day. Even these reductions, if you were just to take the administrative reductions on that second list, take everything else away, that will have an effect on students, because that work has to go somewhere, and most likely it's going to get spread across people who already have full sets of responsibilities, or it gets pushed into the building level, and that's one reason why, again, you don't see those reductions. We insist we're student focused at all levels here, and we're trying to reflect that here as much as possible. And I would say there's a lot on this list that has dire effects on students. That's why you've heard me clearly say we don't recommend any of this. The principals and the cabinet, we did not bring the rest of the leadership in this. I'm not going to speak for them. That's the assistant principals and assistant directors, and that's the athletic director, Mark Berkowitz, so he helped us craft the athletic piece very directly. We do not endorse going below that 289 because of the long-term impact it's going to have on this district.
I just have one question, maybe a little bit philosophically, that when we read the support paper and the numbers you provided, can we feel confident that you looked at this as one campus and there were teaming opportunities across the organization?
I mean, I would ask the principals to speak up at some point, because the reason you keep hearing me say the 4 principals in cabinet, we work on this in lockstep. And then in a critical meeting Friday, though Mark was out, we were emailing Mark on the athletic piece. So we looked at his entire campus. We looked at the ins and outs, the impacts, and all the rest. And again, that's why you don't see on this list assistant directors, assistant principals, because that's that whole campus look. That's also why you're going to continue to hear from me, and I'm the voice, I guess, at this point, a very strong plea to understand that even if that cabinet reduction happens, that work has to go somewhere, and a good chunk of that, depending on the role, will go down into the schools. So we've looked, it's a great question, Victor. We've looked, and it ties very well with Taffy's question. We've looked very systematically, very holistically. So some differences here, but we are looking strategically and we're looking structurally. You know, the structural change to remove positions, then you have to think, what's the work? We can't outsource the academic program here. We outsource the business side as much as we can. We outsource some aspects of that, but a lot of this you cannot outsource. You can't stop. The second list is like a business. We're not going to offer stuff. You know, to get to efficiency in a business, you may remove a line. You may go to a subsidiary or something. We're not doing that, but we get close to that. But it's totally a full campus systematic look.
Was there any ranking as far as effect on students in this page 2 of this spreadsheet?
I mean, again, it's, the details are there. Some of the cabinet members, principals can speak to that. All of it has an effect on students. You can see somewhat directly where it's, be it any of some of the library media specialists, anything right in the schools, that's going to have a more direct effect. No, we
Anything.
purposely, no,
Okay.
there's, because that entire set of 22 we do not recommend. That's why it's listed from the largest reduction down to the lowest, and that's similarly for, if you will, part 1, the listing that got you to the 289. Again, that was largest to smallest.
You know, to Taffy's point, one of the things that is unfortunate is the fact that we don't have a bit of a prioritization even in the deeper list. Let me just put it a little bit in context. You know, in probably every home in Weston right now, people are saying, you know, my health insurance is going up, it's unforeseen, my taxes are going up, and I need to kind of figure out exactly how I'm going to live within my means. What are the things I can do? What are the things I can't do? There's a prioritization that goes on in every household in this town in terms of deciding exactly how they're going to spend their dollars and meet their obligations. I think before we ask and before we actually say to the town, well, this is it. This is the bill. We have to make sure that we actually do that exercise ourselves before we actually ask someone else to actually, you know, pay for something where they're not convinced that we've done that prioritization ourselves. And that was a reason for this. The reason for this is not because we think a zero budget is going to be what we're going to approve, but it's to see that prioritization that goes on in order to determine at the end of the day what we can actually afford, what we can do without, and what we absolutely cannot do without. And without that, what happens is you're leaving it in the hands of the board. That's a very dangerous thing to do because the experts are here in this room. There's no better people to determine how to prioritize. I mean, the board will do it if they need to, but it's not exactly where you want things to end up because we're bound to make mistakes. But you know, but if the view is that there really is no prioritization, none of these things, they all have an equal priority of we can't cut. And if that's the answer, then that's the answer.
Well, I mean, the spirit, as I understood it, was for a dialogue. We brought you this information tonight. We have a couple more meetings, I think, through the dialogue, very actively with the cabinet and the principals. Again, we are joined at the hip, cabinet and principals. That's an uncommon occurrence in public education, that your central office can be that tight and vice versa with your buildings. Some prioritization may emerge.
Yeah.
I think the overarching prioritization that we are bringing to you is that it's very hard work, and with cutbacks from the district to get to the 289. To go deeper in towards that zero, you begin to see, as we had advised you, the level of things you have to then not have happening in Weston. And again, that gets back to the ordering of what's the work, what sort of outcomes do you want, what are the people required. Again, that's third on the list. What are the people required? Third, what's that going to cost us? And then fifth, what is the town willing to afford?
Right.
It's an incredibly generous town, incredibly generous town. I know all the data, and rightly so, because we also have the data on real estate values not recovering, all the rest. We understand the emotion, we understand the angst, we understand the financial impact on lots of families in Weston. So the growth level, the ability to do that is lower. We understand that. We're just saying at the 289, you're close to where you've been, but we will have at least 2 more meetings of dialogue, and we can begin to sort through some of that prioritization. The other part is getting some indication from this list as to where you as a board begin to have some inkling of what starts to feel better or not. I mean, again, it's a back and forth, it's an exchange right now. We're not in the 11th hour Thursday.
Right.
Literally, as some of you maybe not on the board, maybe one was, suddenly we disappear for an hour as administrative team on a Thursday to come up with potential cuts. That's
Yeah.
not where we are. We are way ahead of that, believe it or
Yeah,
not.
and I
You know, way
definitely
ahead of
don't
that.
want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would offer is this list is now the list you would have seen last year as a board. Last year, there were two key opening phrases in the material on, if you cannot afford this, here are the kind of things we'll have to do. Last year, and some of it has been paid forward, i.e. the dental bit, the board and town were able to afford a number just north of 3. That prevented us from going into, in a sense, what this zero list is. There was a question, I think, Victor and others, what were the implications of last year's decisions? The big ones we couldn't hold back were the transportation piece, which we've explained to you is not an outsourcing issue. We talked about that last. We had to cut back on the copy center, which for the teachers in the room know has been a point of pain. We also had to cut back on the special ed assistant support, which is, we know, is a point of pain for the teachers. So those were some of the effect, the cuts, and those were a couple layers away from the classroom, but you can see every day they've had an effect on our students or our teachers, even those couple layers away.
Okay. First, I just wanted to point out, you know, it's not just the financial. I know. I am trying. I'm sorry. Is that better? Okay. It's not just the financial impact individually to the families. I think it's important to really look at it as the erosion of our town and as it being a desirable place to live and to move and to attract people here. I mean, we're talking about a school budget this year, but I mean, if enrollment continues to decline because people don't find this town to be economically sustainable, then we'll be lucky to be in a position like this. It'll just get worse and worse. So I can't stress that enough. But I did have a question, kind of to Victor's point, but thinking a little bit larger. I'm wondering, to what extent did you look at other regions outside of our DERG or within our DERG for, economies of scale and efficiencies? Did you think about, rebidding contracts, working with vendors that we can share services with across districts, looking at things like payroll, HR, tech support, transportation, some of these smaller enrollment classes that you're talking about and smaller enrollment activities that are targeted on this list? Are there ways to combine with other districts that are experiencing similar, that are similarly sized or experiencing similar issues that we are, and take advantage of some of those efficiencies? Is that something that we considered?
I mean, I can start down that path. I mean, Ken can speak to that. Phil can speak to some. Lewis. First off, again, relatively new board members, but we've been, casting out for new agreements for the last several years. So we can pull from the last several budget documents where we've rebid a whole number of contracts in a variety of the services where we can do that, really on, if you put it simply, the business side of the house. So, and yes, the custodial cleaning services one went up, but we knew it would because we shifted from a non-collective bargaining to a collective bargaining arrangement. We had to. There was no choice. And so the increase there was even less than we thought, but it was an increase. But we, on the business side of the house for the last several years, have been constantly looking to get those sorts of efficiencies. Through the optimization work of the last year on the curriculum committee, have very much looked at just within FIRST, are there efficiencies there in terms of the offerings? We've looked, and Lewis can speak to this as well as Ken, looked at the contractual issues. If you wanted to join with Wilton or an area district on an online course, we've looked at all of that repeatedly. Frankly, some of that you can't do, some you can, and the margins for an efficiency are pretty small. To put in the words of an area superintendent who we talk to a lot, well, you get the scale where if we just will combine high schools. So you no longer have Weston High School, but you have Weston fill in the blank high school. And that is a very big question then for the town of Weston. I mean, that's where those sorts of real big, deep efficiencies are. But I don't know, Ken wanted to speak to those because we've been doing work on these for a couple of years.
Many years, yes.
So from an instructional standpoint, we've had conversations with neighboring towns for under-enrolled courses at the high school, if a student, we could reciprocate taking courses at the schools. High school schedules get in the way of that because all the high schools in the area have different rotating or drop schedules, and those have been barriers. We have looked at online courses as well. That does not eliminate the need for a teacher. You need a teacher to help facilitate, and sometimes when you look at that and the cost, it's just not effective that way.
Right, and Bill's right. I mean, for years we've been rebidding a lot of the contracts. As you're correct, that the cleaning, we expected the cleaning contract to be much higher. We're lucky with that. We did look at, because one of the board members brought up at the Thursday meeting the idea of the cleaning contract, and what about rebidding, what about whatever. And that's very much a possibility, but the only way to really reduce that cost, because we just bid it last year and we know what the price ranges are, is literally reduce the level of service in the buildings, which is a problem because we've had a lot of complaints this year from teachers, from staff members, as to the cleanliness of the building, some worse than others, with regard to the cleaning service. So how much more money you can save, it really would depend on the level. I mean, to put it bluntly, if you're willing to have a little less cleaning, you could probably save a little money. But your big outside items are transportation, regular buses rolling down the road. We just rebid that. We just redid that contract about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. The cleaning service, which we just discussed. The food service is mostly self-funding anyway, and you can't reduce the food service the same number of employees. Just like with our budget, all of this is driven by people. People are the cost. It's 80% of your budget. It always will be. And with health insurance costs rising every single year, it's going to go up from 80% as the years goes on, and which is why I said at our last meeting, having a discussion about that in a global sense is great, but in the end, we only have the opportunity to flip back and forth between the PPO with the state and the HSA. So, but that is a real threat. The ongoing health insurance increases, which is what's largely driving a lot of this. We looked at all that. I asked, are there any other contracts that we can look at? And I mean, you really start getting into small potatoes, but yes, I mean, we're always rebidding. We're always trying to get a better deal. With regard to other districts, the immediate districts around us, with the exception perhaps of ER9, which operates differently than we do because it's 3 separate school districts and has a smaller situation, a smaller school population per school per district, because it's 3 combined. It's larger than Weston. With the exception of that, the other districts, as Tony said, I think it was Tony or Melissa maybe, aren't really looking at it as the DIRG. The problem is they're not going really what we're going through here in this discussion. They're not looking at large cuts. They're not looking for these things. So we talked about, well, could we combine transportation services with another town? So say Wilton wanted to combine a bus contract. Well, there might be some economy of scale, but you still have the same number of school buses because you've got to bus people to the same buildings. You're not reducing the number of students. Someone, I think, threw out there the idea, I think it was Bill, of the high school. Now, Weston loves its high school, and they should. It's a great school. A long time ago, back in the early 70s, I believe, the Weston kids were all sent to Staples. And then you built Weston High School, and they all came here. Part of what's driving this is your district, your community, which has chosen to have an excellent school district, is trying to run a premier school district in a small town. It's a boutique arrangement. And that's a tough thing to do. So in the end, if you face a couple of options. One is, do you continue to do that and expect that level of excellence with changes and restructuring and the long-term solutions that we were talking about? Or do you start looking at other ways to start cutting that back? Because if you have a district, if you go down this road again and again, there's not going to be much left. So in the end, we have looked at all the stuff on the edges with regard to contracts and things outside of personnel, but it's 80% of your budget. And even if you were to eliminate the entire central office cabinet, all of us, all 6 of us, other than the superintendent, you have to have a superintendent, that'd save you $1.2 million. You got another $1.8 million to go, and you wouldn't be able to run your district. So we looked at everything. I mean, I stand by what Bill said. We really, really have. Could we save a few dollars on a rebid on smaller contract? Maybe, and we can look at that, but we wouldn't have the confidence to put that number in there. Just like with the cleaning service, we didn't know, well, if we went with less cleaning, what's that turn into dollars? And we couldn't really come up with a valid number for that. So we looked hard for hours and days. We have. So I know that's a lot.
I mean,
but I
one
wanna say
quick
it.
thing. We can get you a summary document. I've been looking for it. The last 3 years, we presented what have been the cumulative reductions in the areas we've gone to. And I think you'll see, some of you know that document. Well, we can get that to you tomorrow. But you'll see over the last 2.5 years, we've made about $2 million in reductions, as far away from the classroom as possible. Predating Rich was Joanne Keating, who's now at New Canaan, working there very, very smartly. A lot of that started then. So over the years, honoring the low levels of increase that Weston would like, there have been the reductions as far away from the classroom as possible. It's evidence. We can give you that evidence to see that now is we're at a different place. We just don't have many of those places to go. Final thing I'll say, I mean, examples, be it any type of educational organization, getting those kind of combined efficiencies is very difficult, so they tend to cut. When you hit these moments, it tends to be reductions, fewer services, fewer programs. Again, we've been in conversation with area districts, and a big fat statement back was, the way you'll save money is join our high schools, join our elementary schools, combine our district. Because, for example, we've had a serious off-the-record conversation with an area district about transportation. You still got to run the same number of buses at $70,000 per bus. You know, so that's until you actually combine it down. You know, but again, we'll get you that list of what's been going on in the last several years for those various types of reductions.
Yeah. We could, you know, we have we can read a lot of documents, but still the question out there that maybe someone could tell me what it is. I'm assuming that this list was created understanding what's really important, what if we had to do it, we would do. But we talk about what we're not getting, but what would we still have if we basically spent just the same amount of money next year as we did last year? I mean,
I can speak to that in terms of
what would we have? I mean, I still just
sure. Sure.
maybe just for our understanding without reading. I mean,
Sure.
Just give us some context around it.
Sure. A couple things. In terms of Durgay comparisons, we want to just Durg. I do have a lot of that information off the top of my head. If we 2.89 to 0, if you look at what would be attracted to K-5 Spanish on this list, we would not have that. You know, significantly reduced in terms of, you know, you look at our CIL model. You look at Project Challenge. Half the DERG has talented and gifted programs. We're one of those districts that has, you know, that has one currently, but that's potentially on this list. When you look at eliminating athletic offerings at the freshman level, that's a pretty, you know, that's significant, and families look at that piece as being important for their college process. You know, obviously the reduction to the writing center limits some support. So there, you know, a lot of things like that. When you look at what other area schools are providing, and you have people shopping for systems, it's a real detractor. Now, another lens that I'd like to put out there for you to consider is that when you look at 2.89 to 0, and just even one change on this list, it puts pressure on the system in terms of how do we make adjustments. And I know from my work with elementary teachers, when you get subjects, you make one curricular change in one area, that's where we're going to focus, because we're going to do it in a lot of places. You know, look at this list, and if multiple areas, this goes to the ranking question. If you're doing a cluster of these kinds of changes, there's only so much that the system can handle in terms of change in 1 year at one time. And I'll go back to when the current curricular leader model was created 12 years ago. It took a year-long study, and actually NESDEC came in and helped look at the former department chair model and helping us evaluate what would be the right way to transition. And we just had another one of those studies in 2017 to reaffirm our curricular model. So even a change like that one, which is number 4 on this list, requires a significant amount of study, and it would have to be a completely different approach.
I mean, for the thought exercise, if you say all you can do is a 0, we've listed for you what you will not have, you still will have a lot. And the team there's going, oh, Bill, why do you say that? Because, you still will have a lot, let me be clear, but you will begin to shave away at some really critical stuff that we provide here. There will not be world language until you hit the middle school, but you will have world language from middle school up. Excellent programs. While the SIL adjustment is here, and the SILs, when I came here and found the SIL process, that's so much more efficient with great outcomes, so it's optimal than anything I've seen anywhere. Public, private, Catholic, or even the folks at Harvard talking about innovation. You've got it here. That's on the list. It's a 5.5 to a 4. Again, don't endorse it, but you'd still have the 4. And it's going to a combined model where some other locations have done that. You would still have that. You would still have your assistant principals, your principals, you'd have your assistant directors, you'd leave your PPS SPEDA, which is essential to leave that for all students, and PPS is for all our students. You would still have that. The cabinet effect, if that happens, that's going to be a distribution of work which will have a significant effect. But you would still have very talented people in all of these locations. You would still have a very robust athletics program. Mark was surgical in coming in. Nobody wants to remove freshman sports, but it was very surgical. The skiing, and then because of the need to be handling equally boy-girl, the freshman boys and girls basketball. But it was very focused. A district that prides itself on music, theater, and the arts, you will still have that. The theater program is left whole as it was last year. We wanted to fix a problem we have at the coordinator level. We would not be able to do that. We would look to private help for that soundboard. The place that takes a gigantic hit, though, will be digital learning and technology. To flatten that out, the teachers are looking for an upgrade in devices. We're not going to be able to do that. Teachers are looking for more of the innovative boards that Craig has brought into the district. We would not be able to do that. So that's why we do not want to touch the building level tech, because they've been building good relationships, and if your machines are more questionable, you got to have the people to fix it. So could you go home and go to bed at night saying at the 0 you still have a strong district? You're going to have a strong district, but you're on a path to significant effects. I'd urge you to study what is taken away to get to the 0, because it's a lot taken away. I just ordered Weston to not start down that path. If you can hit the 289, get there, you still make reductions, but you just don't go into the core as this other role.
I appreciate that, Bill, and I'm glad to hear that with all of these reductions, we'd still have, a really high-performing district. My problem, and I guess that I asked already, and I'll ask it in a new way, is that I'm not convinced that this page 2 of reductions that get us to 0 is the whole list of options for us. It feels student heavy. It feels like we want to agree with you fully that if all these things were taken away, our students would absolutely feel it. And it stops all of our hearts when we read it. My question is this an exhaustive list that could bring us to 0? So I asked it in a different way before, and I'm asking it rhetorically now. I don't need necessarily an answer. I'm just saying it feels like this is not an exhaustive list. When I look at eliminating language for K-12, feels absurd. Since K-2.
It's K-5.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in 2 parts. It feels absurd because we know how brains work and how children need to begin at the very beginning with new languages. That's just not even, and it just feels like this list is not exhaustive and that there are things that are not on this list that we need to put here to increase our number of options to get to 0.
Well, I appreciate it being rhetorical, but it is an exhaustive look, and we've been at this as a team now for several years, looking at potential reductions if asked. So, you know, we worked very intensely on this. It was a fresh look, but it's all here. Again, thought experiment, could you, and I would, you're on the path to not being a high-performing district if you take these items that are listed from the 289 to 0. You are putting your performance at risk. Could you be a district that's a strong district? You probably could be, but you're down a path of risk. Well, we have looked at everything here. Trade-off might be you'd say, well, take more out of the central administration. We are arguing that that is real work that then has to get done by somebody. It can't get jobbed out or just said, we're not going to do that anymore. So then it gets pressed down closer to the students, and thus those working with the students are more burdened by work that has been done at the central level. Everything done within the central administration has a direct effect into the classroom. And we've tried to minimize what that reduction would be. But it has those direct effects, because that work taken out would then turn to the principals, the assistant directors. Some of that's highly numeric. So we think this is an exhaustive list, because either part of it is while you make cuts that are painful into the classroom, the co-curriculars, it's done very surgically to try and still stay away from the class sizes, to stay away from the range of big core opportunities. It's still around, if you will, the edges, but it's still very, very difficult.
Did we introduce, out of your, I'm going to call it list of 21 items because your 22nd is an increase. So did we introduce any one of these 21 items this year? Probably the answer is no, right?
What do you mean by introduce?
Like, did we didn't start, we didn't offer more athletic programs this year. We didn't create the SIL model this year. We didn't introduce foreign language this year. So my comment is, if we've been sustaining these programs for a number of years, and back in 2017 we were under a $50 million district, we can go back to understand what did we do differently back then, and why couldn't we still have all of these programs and not keep increasing the budget, or put these programs at risk to say, oh, but if you don't increase and give us more money, we're going to, we have to take away these programs. No, we've had these programs on the table for a while now.
There's a really simple answer to that. The simple answer is, you're correct. We ran these programs, we've run them for years. But each year, these are all people programs driven by personnel, which has two big drivers. One, primarily because these are mostly teaching positions, the teacher contract, which every year rightfully has an increase that's negotiated between the board and the teacher union. That increase is a big number. 2% or so on the largest expense in Weston, which is what your teacher contract is, and it should be, is a huge number. Health insurance going up around 10% a year is a huge number. So you can have the exact same number of people 4 years ago that's going to cost you a lot more today. That's the bottom line. So the only way you can save that money is either to negotiate no raises with your teachers, which is not going to happen because they're in a collective bargaining situation, and you shouldn't do that, okay, on top of it.
No, I support our
Of course,
teachers.
no, and I know you do. And secondly, insurance is part of that. So unless you fundamentally change the amount of insurance being offered by this district, which must be bargained for, and we're 3 years away from that, these costs are going to increase and compound every year going forward. So yes, we're offering the exact same thing, just to use that hypothetical, but it costs a lot more money. So the only way to save money is to cut positions. That's the bottom line. That's where the money is.
And if I may add,
I don't like it.
Again, I think it'd be very helpful for us to get to you the list that was assembled the last 2 years, because I respect the town's desire to be at a low increase. So it's a 1.5 average increase over the last 9-10 years. I respect that greatly. But to make ends meet, because you need to pay, we have incredible staff, incredible teachers. They deserve every penny they get, and they deserve more. But we've kept that tight. Same with the administrators through WA, same with AFSCME. that's going up. The health costs are going up. And then to balance it out, to keep all these programs going, because it's an excellent question, Ruby, to keep all that going, we've been shaving, cutting elsewhere. And that list we can show you will show that's a good couple million over the last couple years that didn't allow us to avoid this conversation. Last year, Rich and I said, you may have to have this conversation. But you were able to get to the 3-1, so we didn't have to have that sub-289 conversation that we're into now. But we have nowhere else to go, if I'm being clear. It's a longitudinal issue in terms of what's happening here.
Have you, sorry, I'm going to ask one more question. Oh, it's time. Okay,
No, that's all
sorry.
right. Yeah, I just, I think there's a couple of things here. One is we as a board need to be confident with whatever number we actually vote on that we could, that we all endorse it with the other boards, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and the only way to do that is actually to go through these exercises and ask these questions before we kind of hone in on where we think it is going to be. We all agree that is the right place to end up. The second is that one thing that we're looking for really is more of a long-term view, because we're going to be faced with the same issue next year. We're going to be having the same conversation next year if we don't find some systematic way of trying to create capacity to reinvest in those things that we really care about. And that's really and that's not going to, I think if we make some progress towards that in this budget cycle, that's fine, but I think this is a conversation that's going to keep on going, because we're going to be, if we don't find a fundamental, systematic way of trying to create capacity to continue investing in those things we care about, every year we're going to be in this tactical conversation about dollars and cents. And as a board, obviously the Board of Finance is going to determine, what the town can afford, but we as a Board of Ed need to be able to be confident that we've looked at every spot to create the capacity to invest in those things that we care about, and to deprioritize those things that we can actually afford to deprioritize, so that we can actually continue to have the programs that we have. It's not going to happen by magic, and it's not going to happen by increasing the budget 5% a year. It's going to happen by trying to find a systematic way of re-looking on how we actually run the district, so that we can free up some money to continue investing in those things that are important for us to invest in. And it's not going to happen in 2 days, but I think we have to make a good start down that path. Anything else? So there's nothing else. I'm going to have a motion to adjourn this, and then we'll go into our regular meeting. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Do you want to take 2 minutes? And then maybe we'll go right into the.
Take the break after the public.
Yeah, we'll take. Okay, we're going to go right into the regular meeting and then do public comment. All right. So, going to bring the regular meeting to order. We have to do the Pledge of Allegiance again.
Just do a motion.
What's that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance one more time.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Can you? First order of business is the approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion?
I move that the Weston Board of Education approve the minutes from the December 16, 2019 executive and regular sessions, the January 6, 2020 executive session, workshop and budget presentation, the January 8th, 2020 workshop, and the January 13, 2020 workshop.
Can I have a second? Any discussion on the minutes? Vote to approve the minutes. All in favor? All against? Motion passed. Now we'll go into public comment. We'll probably have quite a bit of public comment, so probably going to limit public comment to about 3 minutes each. And when you come up, state your name and the street you live on, and we can start right in.
All right, first up. Hello? Working? Working? Good. All right. Jackie Austin, 5-year resident of Weston, living on Ladder Hill North. I just want to make a comment regarding this process. I've been coming to these budget meetings for the last 3 years, 4 years maybe, not really sure. But every year it is a scramble. Every year it's worse. And so I'm thankful that we are addressing right now the current situation. However, I would like going forward for this Board of Education to look at restructuring and redefining our administrative roles in a way that is specific, timely, appropriate, relevant, and measurable for all of their positions. And I would like to see measurable goals for their positions. And I would like to have part of that be budget related, so that every year we are not scrambling. I would like to see our administration held accountable to staying to the budget that we adapt annually, because I know this past year there were overages, and I believe the year before that there were overages. There always seems to be overages. There always seems to be, oh gosh, we're going to have to defer this cost. Oh gosh, we're going to have to defer that cost. I would like to see an overhaul going forward after this budget is passed. Whatever happens with this, I want to see an overhaul where we look at how we are operating and how we are holding them accountable, specifically and mostly to budget, in addition to their defined roles. If I look at the contracts that we have that I pulled online for the superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of HR, director of finance, the job descriptions are quite vague, and I would like to see them much more clearly defined so that we can hold our people accountable to what they do and how they serve our people. And then there's one other thing that I do want to point out that was brought to my attention. It does appear that all of our administrative staff at this point, none of them live here in Weston. And while that's not a requirement, to me, this is our community. Our schools are a central artery to the community of Weston. It's the pride and joy. It's what we talk about as far as the biggest driver of home values. It's also the biggest driver of activities and connections for the town of Weston. And so I think that just needs to be brought out to say, like, that's something that we need to realize and think about. And it's not to say you're not working towards our best interest, but to me, I think it's important that we have our community working for us. So I would love to hear some our community and our budget and our schools, and not your town, your people, your students. Thanks.
Thank you. Just for those who haven't been involved in this process before, this is public commentary, so the board is just here listening and not responding. It's not Q&A, it's public commentary.
Cynthia Armijo, 223 Godfrey Road East. So I actually have served on a school board. It was in San Francisco. It was one of the most difficult periods of time is budget development. We worked from a 3-year budget cycle, so the budget that we would be discussing tonight would actually be the budget for 2023, with this year's budget pretty much already intact and looking at trajectory rather than year-over-year surprises or expenses. thank you, Jackie, for pointing out that many of the folks in the audience here, the teachers, actually do live in town, are my neighbors and friends, and I appreciate and respect that because we are the revenue side, right? The budget is solely the expense side. And if I ask you, okay, if you're going to ask for an increase from me, a taxpayer, of 5.5%, the immediate question I have is, where do you assume you're going to take that 5.5% from? Well, this is only one source, correct? Unless we're fundraising or we're a charity or we're writing grants for significant amounts for a public school system that is probably the wealthiest. I believe it is the wealthiest in the state. You're not going to get many grants, is my point. So, as a taxpayer, it pains me when I hear that year over year my mill rate's going up because we cannot control costs at our largest cost center. For me, the answer is no. It's zero. I'm not going to pay another dime in mill rate. I love the school. I sent 3 kids through the school. And yes, we know about a contracted increase in rate. I don't know why we continue to point out that it's on the backs of the teachers. We know this. You can look at the union contract. You know it's going to be an increase next year. So how are you going to deal with it next year and the next year after that in 2023? Because the answer for me is no. No more money. Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Joe Castro. I live at 16 Charles Path. I have 5 children. 3 have gone through the Weston school system, and I still have 2 more, 1 in high school and 1 in the middle school. I kind of look at this budget, and I kind of see what the superintendent has put in front of us, and I think it's disingenuous, to be honest with you. I see one thing that jumps out at me on the first page, the 2.89% budget is something that probably a lot of people here might not be aware of, but first, the vacant maintenance mechanic position. Now, from the way it was explained to me by the gentleman in the corner here, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, but that position, I was told, was negotiated with the unions to subsidize the baseball fields that we have contracted out, and that in order for us to contract that with the outside company, that we had to fill that position. This gentleman explained that to me. Secondly, where we talk about the reduced cabinet district-wide position, as I read it here, the only way that we save that $200,000 is if someone were to voluntarily step down. That's not a savings to me. That's a wish. That's not a real budget line item. No disrespect to the gentleman here, but he said if we eliminated all of the Board of Ed positions, the supervisory positions, that the school district wouldn't run. We have, I know 3 great principals here in Patty Falber, Dan Doak, and Lisa Wolak. I know that these people would be able to run the district extremely well. I don't know her, so I haven't had her with the 5 kids. But I am sure that these 3 amazing principals, 4 principals, along with and thank you for all the teachers who have shown up tonight, because this is your free time and this is your school district. So I do appreciate you guys being here and supporting the students, because I know that's what it's all about. But I'm sure that these people could do the job if we save that $1.2 million. There's no doubt in my mind that that could happen. And I do think that this list of 22 items, that's not an exhaustive list. That's also disingenuous. There are numerous other line items I'm sure we could look at away from the students where we could save money. Thank you.
Tony, if I could just clarify one point, the maintenance position is not the position at issue. That was a groundskeeping position. This is a totally different position. So I apologize if there was a miscommunication somewhere. The maintenance is a
There was
position.
one position that we
Right, the
are
groundskeeping
forced to
position
fill.
is
Yeah.
the position that we're adding or actually filling essentially that we hadn't filled before in order to outsource and meet the requirements of the memorandum of understanding with AFSCME. The maintenance mechanic position is a different level position. It does different work. That position is we're putting here on the list as possibly not filling it. That will not affect the outsourcing. Just want to be clear about that. Thank you.
Now? Woo. Okay. So I think everyone behind me and to the side is untouchable. Sorry. You guys are all touchable. You listed 6 people who have contracts who you can't touch unless bought out or they just choose to retire. When you handed out the administration organization chart, there was 42 people on it. Well, not handed out, sorry, when you presented. So assuming maybe 10 of them are sitting on my side here, that leaves about 30. Those people are touchable. Those are not the teachers. Those are not the people who are in the classrooms with my kids. There has to be a better way. There has to be a nicer way. We start off in Hurlbut to be kind. We have the poster here. We're not being kind. This is not teaching our children. This is a terrible lesson. And I don't know how we got here. I do agree that it's unfortunate that the administration doesn't live here, and you said your community. It should be our community. And you're 100% right. And you guys don't feel like we don't feel like you're on our side either. So it goes both ways, which is unfortunate. And we should all band together and try to figure this out. No one knows better. Bill, I know your experience. I know it's 35 years. I know, but you're human. We all make mistakes. Now we have to own it, we have to fix it, and we all have to move on together. And let's try to make it happen. That's all.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Namok Cho. I'm on Walnut Lane. I've been in town since 2001. This is why I always tend to go last, so better people can speak better in front of me. First of all, I'm here to express my appreciation for the chair and the board of Ed here, doing all the hard work and asking the hard questions. You know, you guys are all volunteers, not getting paid a dime, spending many hours away from your loved ones, performing your duties, and asking all the questions that may help find long-term solutions to benefit our kids. Having seen this sheet, and I echo what Joe said prior, the 22 items is dismaying to me to see so many teachers being touched. I'm sure everyone here agrees that the frontline teachers are our most valuable asset, and I'm hoping that we can find solutions that touch them the least or not at all, although that might be unrealistic. I just want to point out the financial predicament that we are in as a town. And as I've mentioned before, a few years ago, Connecticut and Fairfield County are not in a good state economically, not to mention the $80 to $100 billion shortfall that we face up in Hartford. So far, Connecticut's been fairly lucky with the stock market going up year after year, with all the money printing by the central banks. I don't think that'll last forever, but who knows? 5.5% increase, that's a non-starter. That's, pardon my language, insane. 5.5% puts us on a path to get to a 4% mill rate very fast. And think about this, 4% mill rate, and this goes for your town as well, where you live. Think about what that means. It means you are twice the rate of inflation, you are competing with mortgage rates, and you are buying back 70% of your house in 25 short years. That's insane. Weston, at this pace, we will hit that 4% mill rate, 5% if we're unlucky. I mean, 5 years if we're unlucky, 10 years on a regular pace. we hit that number, I think things get ugly. It's not something that the town can afford as a general population. I think we need to find long-term strategic solutions that that preserve our quality as much as possible, but also in the light that we probably will have continued decreasing enrollment. And frankly, for me, the scarier part is the flip side. Consider the situation where Connecticut does not improve and Western Fairfield County does not improve, and we actually have an increase in enrollment with the heavy cost structure that we have. I mean, we're going to all feel the pain in terms of taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to say one thing. The one thing is that during this process, the budget process is always a very difficult process, whether it's in the school system or in business or whatever. It's the most difficult time of the year. We have a difference in point of view, but please don't make any mistake that the staff, the administration, the Board of Ed is not working incredibly hard to try to find a path through this. I think we just have a difference in point of view on the trajectory and how to get there. But everyone's working very hard, and and everyone has the students in mind. I think that this is just the time of the year and the time of the month where we all have to debate, and we have very differing point of views in some cases, and that's just healthy, and we have to work through it together. We'll never get through this if we don't all work together.
Teresa Brasco, Laurel Lake East. Can you hear me? Now is that better? I can pick it up. Okay, great. First of all, I would like to thank this Board of Ed for tackling this problem directly. Starting in 2001, I worked with a retired senior partner from a major accounting firm for 10 years and dissected the budget and prepared management information system packages. We did to the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen every year for 10 years. Comparing our district to other towns, breaking everything down on a per pupil cost basis, and with the view that this was unsustainable starting in 2001. And this is the first time that the board has really, in my opinion, is really tackling the issue. And I will say, both of my children went through the Weston school system from kindergarten through high school. Both of them had received a terrific education from the teachers and the administrators and the athletic teams that they were on. However, in that period of time, the administration in this system has just exploded. And it is the place that we need to look. And from a strategic standpoint, just as a business, going and developing, moving forward, there has to be a strategy to streamline processes. That doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of the processes. You figure out a way to do them, possibly with less people at the administrative level. I think if you go back to 2001 and you look at what has happened in terms of personnel growth with very little student growth, break it down. It's easy to see. It's not the teachers.
Good evening, Greg Haythorn, 6 Winthrop Hill, and my wife, Jen Haythorn, who I'll be speaking for as well. Thank you, Board of Ed. You know we're rooting for you. But to Tony's point, we're rooting for every one of you as well, because we have 2 kids in the district. That's why we're rooting for you. And because everyone in this room benefits, the teachers, the homeowners, the taxpayers, if you guys are more successful tomorrow than you were today. And my wife and I have worked for 2 years now, some of you know, some of you don't, to try to prevent this evening, to try to not have it get to this point. And I'm going to make a comment about the opening comment of the administration again tonight, because every time we come to these meetings, we come hopeful. Every time, because our kids need us to be hopeful. Every time. But the opening comment was, here's your list of 22 things, but we recommend you do none of them. They're all terrible. And it is inconceivable to me that this administrative group would actually come with a list of 22 things and then tell you don't do any of them. Why on earth would you waste everyone's time with this list of 22 things that you can't professionally or personally sanction as beneficial in any way? What have we done for the past 2 hours?
When more times than not, when we've ever met with the administration, the boasting of the Harvard degree and the 35 years of experience brings us a list of items that is trash. We can't understand it.
Throwaways. So we'll go back as a final comment about another comment from Thursday's budget workshop, where the superintendent noted something to the effect of the narrative in the community regarding the budget has spun out of control. I think if you go to the record, you watch the video, it's pretty much verbatim. We would make a slight change to that perspective. The community discussion on the budget has, for the first time since we moved here in 2005, spun out of the control of the administration. And that is the difference. And that's not a bad thing. We've come to dozens of these meetings, and thank goodness, for the first time, it's standing room only. Now, does everyone have to be? No. It's important that this one was. But this community engagement is healthy. It's imperative. We will get to a much better place. The teachers will get to a much better place as a result of being here, now in this room together, and whether we're agreeing or not, working together. Thank you to every one of you. Good luck the next couple days.
Any more public comment? All right, let's hear from our student reps.
Hello. So Graham couldn't be here tonight, but he does say hi to everyone. And I just wanted to start off by saying that as a student, I'm so far removed from any of this budget work, and I honestly don't understand a lot of it, neither does Graham, but we both are so thankful for all the work that the administration, the PTO, and this board has put into our school system. As students who are going off to college next year, we really do take for granted how much Weston, how much not only the high school, but the entire school system has prepared us for such a wonderful future. And we really are grateful and recognize everything that this board has done for us. So we just, well, he's not here, but I know he would thank you all as well. But I know I speak on behalf of the entire student body from all of the schools when I sincerely thank you for everything you've done for our school systems, because the amount of opportunities that we've had, I know that I've had, are just so numerous, and we're grateful for that. So now back to what actually is going on in the school. So on Saturday, January 11th, the debate club hosted their very first debate at Weston. It was really cool. I was there helping out, managing it. There were over 160 debaters, judges, educators, and parents that were in attendance. It was from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and the board worked tirelessly on making it happen, which was really cool since usually the debates are 30 to 40 minutes away, so that was really awesome to see. Midterms just ended, which is early for all of us, second semester. We had the service dog come, which was so wonderful. It was a nice thing to see in the hallway after you get out of a stressful test. You see this really cute dog and just greeting everybody, which is awesome. And we were also in our advisory groups, especially with midterms coming up, we were with the whole DBT and mindfulness idea of, staying calm even though it is a stressful time in the school year. There is an end to midterms, and if you study hard and keep focused and manage your time effectively, you'll get through it, as we all did. Additionally, Weston Against Cancer is hosting an event sometime in February, likely February 4th around that time, where we are fundraising money and toys for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. So we're going to make Valentine's cards for the children at the hospital, the one closest to our school. And we're also going to have a Play-Doh drive because they're running quite low on Play-Doh, and the kids love it, but they have to throw it out after every single use. So especially since the holiday season is over and they're not getting as much donations, especially with toys, we're going to get a bunch of Play-Doh and send it over, which is going to be really awesome. Additionally, student government is hosting a Super Bowl fundraiser. So that's essentially where everyone is bringing in soup for the food pantry and for person to person. They really need soup this time of year, and it's going to be this week only, and it's going to end on Friday. So everyone's going to bring in soup. The different grades are going to compete to see how much they can bring in, and it goes along with the Super Bowl because Super Bowl, it's a very cheesy pun, but it works. It's a nice poster that we put it on, so that's great. Additionally, our school play for Cinderella just started up. There's different rehearsals. Pit orchestra is working. I know I'm in the pit orchestra. I love it. So we're starting to have rehearsals, and it's starting to come together. We're super excited for that. We're also planning a winter assembly, student government is, sometime within the next few weeks or maybe in the next month to commemorate our sports captains and the different leaders of clubs throughout our school, because we really like how there's so much spirit this year as compared to past years, and we're trying to really ride the coattails of that. So by having this winter assembly, we're hoping that the spirit just kind of continues and we keep up this bright energy from all of our students. Additionally, Tri Music Honor Society, we are having a event for Valentine's Day as well, where we're going to sell for about $1, $2, different singing grams or instrument grams where students in the Honor Society will sing or play Valentine's or love songs in each of the classrooms. And you can send one to your friend, you can send one to a teacher. It's super funny, it's hilarious, everyone loves it. And we're going to be doing that right up until February break. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for bringing us down to earth and reminding us why we're all here. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we resume the rest of the meeting.